Welcome learners to this session, which is on human rights and right to development. I am Dr. Suneet Srivastava, the Director, School of Law. So let's begin with a brief introduction of what human rights is actually. Human rights have emerged as the most powerful concept of our age. It has become, in the opinion of former Secretary General of the United Nations, Butros Ghali, a common language of mankind and the ultimate norm of all politics. Adopting this language allows all people to understand others and to be the authors of their own history. Human rights, by definition, are the ultimate norm of all politics. Today, everyone talks about them and struggles for their recognition, promotion, and protection. A statement of Sir Hurst Lauterpacht, a noted protagonist of human rights and one of the most eminent international lawyers of the 20th century, rightly captures the spirit of modern laws and functions of the states. He has observed in 1947, the protection of human personality and of its fundamental rights is the ultimate purpose of all law, national and international. Similarly, Adlai Stevenson of the USA once had remarked, human rights are the core of everything we do and try to do. These two statements, made by a jurist and a statesman, candidly reveal that the concept of human rights has acquired a significant place in human life, civilization, as it is true that a large part of our time is devoted in the ultimate analysis to the promotion and protection of human rights. Moreover, it needs to be recalled that both the classical as well as contemporary political theories have affirmed and reaffirmed the significant principles that it is the individual for whom the state, or for that matter, any social or legal order exists, and not vice versa. Now, since 1948, the United Nations has adopted more than 100 human rights documents covering the entire gamut of human relationships, and these, among others, deal with the rights of women, children, refugees, migrant workers, stateless persons, minorities, indigenous peoples, and prohibition of racial or religious discrimination, genocide, slavery, torture, stateless persons, minorities, and indigenous people. In the introduction of the international protection of human rights, there appear an institutional mechanisms of international human rights laws capable of becoming the basis and the framework for the full development of man's personality, represent for his standing as a human being and the equality of citizens before the law within the various states. The importance of human rights is such that it can truly be asserted that, with the emergence and the first steps taken to promote and protect them, human society has taken a qualitative leap forward. In any event, human rights represent a new element in the development of mankind and in the life of human society, because they signify the end of a period and the beginning of a new era in national and international governance. Now let's see, what does it mean? What is actually the meaning of human rights? In general terms, human rights are entitlements due to every man, woman, and child because they are human. In other words, certain inherent and inalienable rights are due to human beings simply of being human. The concept of human rights derives from human dignity and the inherent worth of a human being. Therefore, it is suggested that whatever adds to human dignity and the fundamental freedom of humans is a human right. In other words, human rights are what each human being is entitled to as human being to live a dignified, secured life of his or her choice. So all human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. This assumption is derived from the natural rights theory, according to which the right to liberty and equality is man's birthright and cannot be alienated, and that because man is a rational and moral being, he is different from other creatures on earth and therefore entitled to certain rights and freedoms which other creatures may not enjoy. Formally, human rights are proclaimed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights adopted by the General Assembly of the United Nations Organizations on 10 December 1948 and put into legal form in a number of international acts and treaties. However, there are differences of opinion with regard to meaning, nature, and content of rights. It is a concept very much contested not only between the East, representing the former socialist states, and the West, representing the liberal democratic states, but also between developed and developing countries. And each group of nations has a different perception of human rights. The so-called first world countries of the West believed in the supremacy of the individual, while the communist countries of the East focused on the community and the unconditional priorities of class interest. Hence, the individual benefited from these group rights as his or her rights were better provided for within the community. And the communists, they gave priority to economic, social and cultural rights and insisted that they could not be separated from the class character of society in which they existed. While the liberal democratic states of the West asserted the primacy of civil and political rights, this debate of priority of one set of rights over another continued to occupy the agendas of national and international governance during major part of the 20th century. The newly emerging states of the Third World, while adopting the Eastern or Western model of human rights paradigms in the constitutions or a combination of both, focused on solidarity or group rights such as right to self-determination of peoples, including sovereignty over the natural resources, the right to development, the right to a healthy and ecologically balanced environment, the right to peace, and the right to ownership of the common heritage of mankind. They also insist on interdependence and indivisibility of civil and political rights to economic and social rights. Thus, the modern concept of human rights is comprehensive in its nature and content. It includes three types of rights: civil and political, economic, social and cultural, and the emerging collective or group rights. In fact, the catalogue of rights is expanding every day. Moreover, it must be noted that no catalogue elaborating specific human rights will ever be exhaustive or final. Its content goes hand in hand with the state of moral consciousness or development of civilization at any given time in history. Some definitions of rights. Some important questions according to Ernest Barker, rights are the external conditions necessary for the greatest possible development of the capacities of the personality. Harold Lasky defines right as those conditions of social life without which no man can seek, in general, to be his best. On their importance, he remarked, the state is known by the rights it maintains. In the word of Bernard Bosanquet, we have a right to the means that are necessary to the development of our lives in the direction of the highest good of the community of which we are a part. Leonard Howard says, rights are what we may expect from others and others from us, and all genuine rights are conditions of social welfare. Thus, the rights anyone may claim are partly those which are essential to every man in order to be a rational human person, and partly those which are necessary for the fulfillment of the function that society expects from him. They are conditioned by and correlated to his social responsibilities. Wilder considers that rights are reasonable claims to freedom in the exercise of certain activities. He further says, rights depend upon duties. It is only in a world of duties that rights have significance. They are like the two sides of a coin. Professor Hoffeld calls the four things which the term a right covers claims, privileges or liberties, powers and immunities. Examples of claim rights are the right of an old age pensioner to a pension and an unemployed to get his social security benefits. Examples of liberty rights are the right of a man to spend his leisure as he pleases and to grow a beard if he wants to. A power rights entitles the right holder to require other people to do certain things at his discretion. Examples are the right of a landlord to alter the rent paid by his tenants and the right of a policeman to question eyewitnesses at the scene of a crime. An immunity right entitles the right holder to be exempt from something. An MP, member of parliament, to be exempt from the law of libel for what he says in parliament. A conscientious objector to be exempt from military service. In short, rights are nothing but claims against the state or government or individual persons. Rights are also used in a variety of ways, indicating differences in ideological and philosophical perceptions. For some, rights are normative attributes that belong to a self-conscious person who perceives himself as an agent of purposive creative action. For others, rights are entitlement to choose from. McCloskey describes right positively as entitlements to do, to have, enjoy or have done. For McCormick, rights always and necessarily concern human goods, that is concerned with what is good, at least in normal circumstances, for a person to have. Feinberg and White asserts that rights can be possessed, enjoyed, exercised and claimed, demanded and asserted. There are two other terms, legal rights and moral rights. The former refers to rights laid down in law and the latter refers to rights based on general principles of fairness and justice. Moral rights may be or may not be enforced and supported by the law of the land. For example, a teacher may claim that he/she has a moral right to discipline the pupil, offer them advice about the academic and moral development or about the choice of career. Sometimes people claim certain rights because of what they earn through the work. By writing a book, an author may gain both a moral and legal right to a percentage of the proceeds from sales. In other words, human rights are those conditions of life that allow us to develop and use our human qualities of intelligence and conscience and to satisfy our spiritual needs. We cannot develop a personality in their absence. They are fundamentals to our nature. Without them, we cannot live as human beings. James Nichol rightly states that human rights aim to secure for individuals the necessary conditions for leading a minimally good life. According to Scott David, the concept of human rights is closely connected with the protection of individuals from the exercise of state, government, or authority in certain areas of their life. It is also directed towards the creation of social conditions by the state in which individuals are to develop their fullest potential. Plato and Alton have stated that human rights are those which are considered to be absolutely essential for the survival, existence, and personality development of a human being. To deny human rights, the rights to set the stage for political and social unrest, wars, hostility between nations and between groups within a nation, and that denial leads to urgent demands for a better life and larger freedom. Human rights, far from being an abstract subject for philosophers, political scientists, and lawyers, affect the daily lives of everyone, man, woman, and the child. The term human rights is all-comprehensive. It includes civil, political, negative rights, and economic, social, and cultural, which are also known as positive rights, and collective or group rights. It should also be acknowledged that rights and duties are two sides of the same coin. One's right imposes duties on others. Allegiance to the state, where a citizen resides, obeying the state laws, payment of taxes, exercising right to vote, rendering compulsory military service, parental duty towards the children when they are young, and the duty of adult persons to take care of the needs of the old parents, etc., are some of the duties which have been recognized in different countries. Now, let's see what are the kinds and nature of human rights. Rights can be of many kinds, such as legal rights, moral rights, civil rights, political rights, social rights, economic rights, cultural rights, and so on. Those rights which are provided in law and protected by it are called legal rights. Enforcement of right is very important, but it is quite possible to have a right to something without the right being enforced. For example, if my car is stolen and the thief is not caught or arrested, I still have a right to my car. Three kinds of human rights have emerged at the international level. They are civil and political rights, economic, social, and cultural rights, and Group 1, solidarity rights. The UDHR and ICCPR recognize many civil and political rights, such as the right to life, liberty, and security of persons, prohibition of slavery, torture, arbitrary arrest, detention of exile, right to fair trial, freedom of movement, religion, freedom of expression, right to privacy, right to seek asylum, right to nationality, etc. These rights are sometimes known as first-generation rights, as they found their first formulation in the Western socio-political thoughts and governance in 17th and the 18th centuries. In the 70s, another set of rights have evolved at the international level. They are known by different names: third-generation rights, group rights, and collective rights. Such rights are the following: the right to development, which however is also seen as the right of individuals; the right to peace; the right to clean natural environment; the right to one's own natural resources; the right to one's own cultural heritage. It should be noted that the term generation of rights is a misnomer. It suggests a succession of phenomena whereby a new generation takes the place of the previous one. That is, however, not the case with the three generations of human rights. On the contrary, the idea is rather than the three generations exist and be respected simultaneously. Moreover, there is the curious phenomenon that one particular right, that of self-determination, belongs to both the first and the second generations. So it needs to be noted here that according to the Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action 1993, all rights are indivisible, interdependent, and essential. In fact, the term generation of rights is not coined by the United Nations. It is suggested that the word generation should be replaced by categories. Now, let's see the salient features which mark the concepts of human rights. Human rights are universal moral rights. They belong to everybody because they are human. By definition, rights are not earned, bought, or inherited. They are inherent in human dignity. They are inalienable. One of the guiding principles is that rights are available to all persons in the state irrespective of race, sex, color, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property or other article or other status. Article 2 of the UDHR, Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They are universally applicable to all persons. In other words, non-discrimination is an important principle of contemporary human rights. They are universal in the sense that they transcend the national boundaries or ideologies. They are designed to be culturally and ideologically neutral. They are not specifically liberal or socialist, Eastern or Western, Northern, developed or developing, Christian, Buddhist, Islamic or Hindu. The concept of human rights is comprehensive in its nature and content. It includes all categories of rights such as civil and political, economic, social and cultural, and even the newly emerging group or collective rights like right of minorities, indigenous people, right to development, right to peace and right to clean environment, etc. In fact, the catalogue of rights is very detailed and comprehensive. The list of rights is expanding every day. Moreover, no catalogue elaborating specific human rights will ever be exhaustive. The content of human rights goes hand in hand with the state of moral consciousness or civilizational development at any given time in history. Also, all rights and freedoms are indivisible and interdependent. The United Nations does not rank them in any hierarchy or any order of priority. Though we may classify rights in different categories, they are all complementary to each other. They are also interrelated. No set of rights has priority over the other. Rights are not absolute or unlimited. Some of them can be suspended during war or public emergency. Justifiable and reasonable limitations can be imposed on their exercise, which are necessary to protect national security, public order, public health, or morals, or the right and freedom of others. Let's talk about the evolution of rights development at the domestic level. Now, the idea of rights and duties of citizens is as old as the concept of the state. In fact, as old as human species. A man is a social being and cannot live outside society, since he or she is not self-sufficient for one's needs. The problem of rights arose involving man's relations with other individuals in a society and his relations with state and the government. Through these relationships, men evolved certain norms of social behavior which got crystallized over centuries, struggles into what we call today as human rights. One may find their origin in ancient Greek and Roman political systems. In Europe, Confucian system in China, the Islamic political system in the Muslim world, and the Panchayat system in India. But the concept of rights in those systems was not fully developed and understood in the sense we know today. So many important events and revolutions contributed towards the development of human rights. First, the earliest charters of human rights are to be found among the three British constitutional documents, which are namely the Magna Carta, 1215, the Petition of Rights in 1628, and the Bill of Rights in 1689, adopted after the Glorious Revolution of 1688. These three documents were the forerunners of the modern Bills of Rights. They imposed restrictions on the powers of the king and his arbitrary rules. It may be recalled that in the first century England, there were conflicts and tensions between the Parliament and the king over the latest arbitrary rule. These struggles led to the Glorious Revolution of 1688. This revolution is also known as the Bloodless Revolution. James II, the king, was forced to abdicate the throne. Fearing for his life, the king fled the country, paving the way for the accession to the throne of William of Orange III and Mary II, the king's daughter, who sided with the Parliament in his struggle. Following the revolution, the Parliament passed the Bill of Rights in 1689. This bill declared illegal the claimed suspending and dispensing powers of the crown. It prohibited the levying of taxes or the maintenance of standing army in the peacetime by the crown without parliamentary consent. The bill also provided that excessive bail ought not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel and unusual punishment inflicted. It further provided that jurors ought to be duly impaneled and returned, and that all grant and promises of fines and forfeitures of particular persons before convictions are illegal and void. Moreover, it may be noted that the Glorious Revolution provided a precedent that rulers could be removed by popular will if they failed to observe the requirements of constitutional legitimacy. Now let's talk about the important Declaration of Rights. It was in the 17th and the 18th centuries that the necessity for a set of written guarantees of human freedoms was felt as the new philosophy of governance. The dignity and rights of man was the dominant theme of political philosophy of the 18th century. This theme flowered into practical significance with such historic documents as the Virginia Declaration of Rights 1776, the American Declaration of Independence 1776, the French Declaration of the Rights of the Man and Citizen 1789, and more lasting importance, the series of amendments to the US Constitution adopted in 1791 as the American Bill of Rights. Let us elaborate the rights proclaimed in these documents. The American Declaration of Independence contains ideas of human rights such as that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the government. That whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or abolish. The Virginia Declaration of Rights included specific liberties that were to be protected from state interference. These included freedom of press, the free exercise of religion, and the obligation that no person should be deprived of liberty except by the law of the land or the judgment of the peers. The Virginia Declaration had a great influence on the drafters of the US Constitution, as these minimum rights were included in it subsequently. Now, seeing the French Declaration of Rights of Man and Citizens in 1789, it recognized many rights such as all men are born equal, the state shall preserve the natural rights of man, which are liberty, property, security, and resistance to oppression. No one may be indicted, arrested, or detained except in cases determined by law. So all men should be presumed innocent until judged guilty. freedom of thought, opinion and press, freedom of religion, no taxes without consent of all citizens. No one shall be denied right to property except for an obvious requirement of public necessity, certified by law, and on condition of just compensation in advance. The Declaration proclaimed that liberty consists in the ability to do whatever does not harm others. Hence, the exercise of rights of each man has no limits except those which assure to other members of society for the enjoyment of the same rights. Law can only determine these limits. Therefore, it is generally said that my right to swing my hands ends where someone's nose begins. Now, let's talk about the international efforts to develop human rights norms. During the last 350 years, many international efforts were undertaken in conferences and international organizations which contributed towards the evolution of human rights, norms and standards. We will be talking about some of those norms. The first and very foremost is the humanitarian intervention. The doctrine of HI has been expounded by many international lawyers, including Hugo Grotius, the father of international law in the 17th century. This doctrine recognizes as lawful the use of force by one or more states to stop the maltreatment by a state of its own nationals when that conduct was so brutal and large scale as to shock the conscience of the community of nations. Then the international humanitarian law. International humanitarian law was developed through many treaties concerning laws of war. Treaties of 1864, 1906 and 1929 regulated the rights of the wounded in armies in the field, the wounded at sea in times of armed conflict. The 1864 treaty also protected medical personnel in hospitals, and also the protection to civilian population was provided by 1907 Hague Convention, and the prisoners of war were dealt with by treaty in 1929. The four Geneva Conventions aim to protect the sick and the wounded members of the armed forces, prisoners of war, POW, and civilian population. For instance, the Geneva Convention on POW, it requires that prisoners be treated humanly and that they may not be subjected to physical or mental torture to secure from them information of any kind. It prohibits measures of reprisal against POW and provides that all POW be treated alike by the detaining power, without any adverse distinction based on race, nationality, religious belief, or political opinion. Abolition of slavery. The first international treaty concerning human rights will linked with the acceptance of freedom of religion. Example, the treaties of Westphalia of 1648 and the abolition of slavery. Slavery had already been condemned by the Congress of Vienna in 1815, and a number of international treaties on the abolition of slavery appeared in the second half of the 19th century. Again, international labor standards. International Labour Organization ILO, which has been in existence since 1919 and became a specialized agency of the United Nations in 1946, seeks to achieve social justice through its activities in the social and labor fields. The protection of minorities under the League of Nations. The League of Nations was given a mandate to supervise the enforcement of the minorities treaties emerging from the 1919 peace agreements with East European and Balkan states. These treaties included provisions relating to the protection of the minorities, and the minorities regime of the League consisted of 5 special treaties binding Poland, the Serbo-Slovene state, Romania, Greece, and Czechoslovakia. Special minorities clauses in the treaties of peace with Austria, Bulgaria, Hungary, and Turkey. 5 general declarations made on admission to the League by Albania, Lithuania, Estonia, and Iraq. A special declaration by Finland regarding the Alaska Islands, and treaties relating to Danzig, Upper Silesia, and Memel. Now coming to the United Nations and human rights. The Charter of the United Nations in 1945 perhaps was the most important landmark, we can say, in the development of the modern principles of human rights. The Charter, it makes repeated references to human rights. It considers that the international peace and security depends, among other things, on the recognition of observance of human rights, and its preamble states that the people of the United Nations express their determination to reaffirm faith in fundamental human rights of men and women and of nations large or small. So, after going through this session, I may conclude that in this session, as students, learners, you have learnt about the importance of human rights for the development of human personality, various meanings or understandings of the concept of human rights. Important definitions of the concept of human rights have also been analyzed in this session. And finally, I would say that in this session we have discussed about the nature and features of human rights. We also learned that human rights are universal, inalienable, indivisible, and interdependent. They are not absolute or unlimited. Their reasonable restrictions or limitations can be imposed on their exercise. The most important part of our discussion is concerned with the origin of human rights, from Magna Carta in the 13th century to the League of Nations in the 20th century. In this journey of evolution of human rights, we have discussed how the English, American and French revolutions and the Bills of Rights have contributed towards evolving a comprehensive concept of human rights. The contributions of League of Nations, ILO, ICRC, International Committee of Red Cross and the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917 have been also essayed here. So all major national and international developments concerning the evolution of human rights have been examined here. With that, I come to an end of the session. I hope you've really enjoyed this session. Thank you so much.